All right, so it looks like the Festag update beta has launched. We have a nice big, large set of patch notes to jump into. But if you're looking to maybe fix your game because you're getting so many crashes from the Vampire Coast, or you want to get a jumpstart on some of those balance patches, patch notes, changes, whatever the hell, go ahead and get involved with this beta. You'll find these instructions in the beta itself, or the patch notes. But the real big thing here is we're going to get some great balance changes that are going to affect mainly Vampire Coast and counts, but also we're going to get a lot of fixes for some of the crashes that are occurring, especially when a Vampire Coast faction owning Pirate Coves was destroyed. That's causing people to not even be able to play the game at all. So this is a lot of really good, hopefully good fixes to some of those game-breaking bugs. Also, Spectator mode update, which, I mean, that's huge for people like Turner and I, who kind of like Spectator mode's our bread and butter when it comes to hosting the ECL or the Warpstone Cup, so stuff like that, which is pretty awesome. Let's dive on into these patch notes. So one of the big things here is the red skill tree update. And you can see from this picture, we'll jump over to another tab in a second here, quite a bit has been overhauled. And the nice thing about this is that this isn't following the typical kind of trope that they've been doing where, okay, we're going to do one faction at a time, and that's going to be in conjunction with the DLC. This is a nice kind of like overall facelift that moves some abilities to the yellow tree, some abilities around in the red tree. We can see here that skills change to a single or double tier rather than the 3 tiers that they were before. We're seeing that's all kind of applied across the board for some characters. Skills moved from red tree to the yellow tree, the quote-unquote character line, and how that's all affect there, and then miscellaneous skill and trait changes. Now, we also see some big changes to the Vampire Count Bloodline Lord skills. Some of these are pretty significant. Some are a little bit more in tune with things. But like if you take a look at Waking Dead, the it used to be melee attack, melee defense, speed, and charge for Blood Knights and Graveguard. Now it's just melee attack and armor for Blood Knights and Graveguard. Blood Knights and Black Knights. They've kind of tweaked a little bit here with Dread Knights, which is weapon strength and charge for the BBC, Black Knights, Blood Knights, Corpse Cart, Hex Race, and Mortis Engine, to now weapon strength, charge, and ward save for the BBC, Black Knights, Blood Knights, Corpse Cart, Hex Race, Mortis Engine. Now, we can see here from this massive list that they've done quite a bit of overhauling and changing around and really mixing things up. You can see from this list, for example, the Unliving Host is zombies, skeletons, crypt ghouls, and graveguard. It shows the units, then the skill levels and what they affix and what they change. Also, we get the veteran skills that they were talking about as well, and how they've been changed to just the single one-off rather than the 3-tier, which is, I think, a little bit better. I think the 3-tier can kind of get a little too cumbersome, and you run into not necessarily point bloat, but you find yourself in situations where you're like, well, shit, I don't want to... That's 3 whole points for that? Okay, that's good. I need it, but like Champions of the North, Marauder Spearman, Berserker Champions, melee defense 5, armor 12, physical resist 15%. A little bit easier and quicker to access versus kind of going through the 3 steps if it's a 1 or 2 step this time around, or what have you. We can kind of see that progress as we look at the rest of these, like Blessed of Grange, armor 12, melee defense 5, magic resist 15% with miners, warriors, and longbeards. So an overall kind of tidying up of the list, making it less point dense and more point focused, which I'm pretty happy about. I think that everyone can really agree the Total War Warhammer 1 races, playing them is kind of a drag. Like, I love the... Actually, I'll say it. I'll say it. You guys can finally throw it back in my face, but I'll say it. I love playing the dwarves. I'm so want to say that. Fuck those things. But still, when you play the dwarfs, it's just so cumbersome trying to like wade through their gigantic research tree, through their gigantic skill tree. This at least kind of like tightens it up a little bit and streamlines it, especially for the vampire counts. And I like how they kind of adjusted some of the stuff with the Vampire Count Bloodline Lord skills, because they were pretty strong. I mean, Unliving Host, melee attack, melee defense, speed, and charge for zombies, skeletons, and crypt ghouls. That's all your bread and butter right there. But they've changed it now to melee attack and melee defense for zombies, skeleton, crypt ghouls, and graveguard. So it has a little bit more of a wide sweeping effect, but at the same time, you do get it. It does still apply to the kind of early game bonus. I'm okay with those kind of shifts and changes to balance things out a little bit. Now, one of the biggest things that I know a lot of people were asking for are mount unlock ranks being lowered in the Total War Warhammer 1 factions, namely, of course, Empire, for example. I think it's like their Warhorse was at like rank 10 or some shit, so something ridiculous like that. And now we can see that these are the new kind of the new standard for how these ranks are going to apply. So light armored steed would be 4, going up to your flying monster at 18, or a large monster at 18 for your melee and lords and heroes. For your caster lords and heroes with a light armored steed at 7 versus the 4 of the melee, with your flying monster at rank 22. So couldn't be more stoked on that. I think that kind of, again, helps to streamline and make the game a little bit more fun and fluid, while also staying with the kind of general pacing that Creative Assembly has created. But of course, we got our new Spectator mode, kind of updates and fleshing out a little bit more here. It is still in its beta phases, so I could think that this is now, they're just trying to add more and more of what they can. Players now connected to Spectator host can now see ready status of the host. Again, this is more for people like myself or Turin or anyone else who's hosting tournaments like Shetland Apache and such. That's pretty huge, because I don't have to type into chat anymore, hey, go ahead. I can just press a button. They will now know what I want to do. So I'm pretty stoked on that. Also, the Spectator host can now directly invite players into their game using the invite button, making things a little bit more streamlined when it comes to the tournament process, rather than jumping from lobby to lobby or hoping to get the right people in there. Stuff like that, I can just outright invite people. So that does make all of our tournament gameplay a little bit tighter, a little bit less messy. It currently is a little bit of an issue. But there is a bevy of crash fixes that have happened. Fix a crash, a multiplayer campaign that occurred when one player unlocked a vampire bloodline when the other player was playing as a non-vampire count race. That was a big one I had seen on Reddit. Let's see. Settlement paddle was open. Kerwin Beastman Brayherds changed stances. The biggest one that I saw was this, of course, right? This is the one that we all see. It's why it's number 1 on the list. But another one, I guess, would occur when triggering the Chaos Challenger spawn when playing as Norska, and also when zoning back in from doing Tyrion's Sunfang quest battle. So those have now since been fixed. There is, I think, 1 or 2 other crashes that are not in this list. Hopefully they'll be caught up in the list before the beta goes to a full launch, and we'll see that. Hopefully all the crashes that have been reintroduced with Vampire Coast getting shored up, no pun intended, but I mean, let's not hold our breath on this, right? There have been a lot of changes too, to Harkin, to Noctilus, to the Vampire Coast as a whole. I urge you to take a look at this list and see what kind of applies to the armies you play the most. Like, I mean, Morgar's 60% upkeep for Chaos Spawn now quickly applies. Lord of Dread trait now applies to the Rotting Promethean Gunnery mobs. You can see the Harkin's Man of War skill, Noctilus's Master, Solastra's, all these little kind of bonuses were not being applied, but now should happen, or should be applied now properly. Let's see here. Lord skills that required unit rank 7 now apply their effects correctly. Should now apply the correctly to Regiments of Renown, which was a thing I actually noticed in one of my playthroughs, that my Regiments of Renown were not getting the bonuses that they should have as the unit types they were. So that's kind of a nice little thing there to see. Also, Gunnery White's gun sight will now increase missile damage rather than weapon strength. Huge. But again, you can kind of scroll through this list. There was something about the Black Arcs having an issue on here. Oh, here it is. Black Arcs will no longer lose their buildings upon defeat in battle, which is, again, massive here. Lokir Felheart will now be immortal if confederated. Sucks losing him. Let's see. There was a couple that I noticed that were pretty big, but for the most part, by Beastmen and Chaos should no longer be able to occupy Albion, which is substantially weird. And then stuff like animations fixes for Red Duke, music for the campaign, text and typos, that kind of stuff. Oh, Lamian Bloodline minus 50% upkeep effect now correctly shows on the amount shown on the hero's information panel, so that's kind of nice to see. Now, of course, we get some nice battle changes and fixes across the board, you know. Added Battle of Eternal Tides to the custom map battles. Female Vampire Fleet Admirals now have skirmish. Little tweaks here and there. Capitalize the I in infantry because, you know, that's in infantry because I was pissed off about that as a grammar Nazi. But we can see now into the unit balancing. We have quite a few things all over the place. The biggest stuff is what we're going to see with vampire counts, and it's kind of teased in the title of this video, right? About the end of the Terrorgheists. But we'll talk about that in a second. So Bretonia's got its little tweaks here, mainly to the Green Knight having his reactions ignore chance from 0 to 50, knocking her up from 0 to 50, plus AP and plus base damage. So the Green Knight's going to be a little bit more of a terror on the battlefield. The Pegasus Knights increase to their mass, so they're a little bit more shock value increase. Knights Errant get a charge bonus, including the Defenders of Fleur-de-Lis, which are the Knights Errant Regiment of Renown. And the Grail Relic Icon of Devotion abilities effect range was changed from 40 to 55. Again, I believe it was changed from 55 to 40 not too long ago. So that's a change back of where it was. Cryptus is now aquatic because we gave a fuck to begin with. But now the Thane now has access to Master Rune of Slowness in multiplayer, which is pretty cool here. And then the Master Engineer no longer has access to Master Rune of Slowness in multiplayer. This could make for some pretty terrifying use for the Thane, because the Thane has very much fallen out of use with his sword, the Tormentor Sword, being removed from the Thane in, I believe, this was the beginning of Vampire Coast. So this gives him the access or the ability to slow things down again and become a little bit of a 3 or 4'5", 4'8" terror on the battlefield. And it's going to be really fun to see how Master Rune of Slowness factors into the meta for the Thane and for the dwarves as a whole. Some minor tweaks here for the Empire, mainly to the mortar cost and flagellant to increase strength of penitent abilities, physical resistance effect from 12 to 15. The Crimson Killers get a nice little bonuses and penalties here and there. Increase in cost, plus 20 men on Ultra, which is okay, whatever it is. But minus 5 armor, minus 1 health per entity, minus 1 charge bonus, minus 2 AP, plus 0.6 melee attack interval, tweaks their splash damage characteristics. So basically, these guys are not going to be as durable anymore. They're going to cost a little bit more. They're going to do less AP damage, but they'll attack more often. Azag can now equip the Spider Banner in multiplayer. And then the High Elves get Alistair the White Lion Dragon Mount added Siege Attacker. That's only for campaign. That's not going to be in your actual multiplayer playthrough. Bastiladon get a little tweak here with improved accuracy. Norska gets some tweaks here across their chariots, their champions. Kihar the Tormentor added a Siege Attacker. A lot of things got Siege Attacker added to them to kind of fit into stuff that is equal size that now has Siege Attacker that has been added in recent DLC or FLC. So I think that's why we're seeing a lot of Siege Attacker added in this patch. The big Skaven buff we've all been asking for has finally landed. +1 melee attack, Plague Monk Sensor Bearers. Welcome to the front of the fucking line. But moving on from that, Tomb Scorpions hit reaction ignore chance from 0 to 40, knocking her up from 0 to 40, mass from 3,000 to 2,400, minus 2 melee defense, and added Siege Attacker. So yes, you get Siege Attacker for campaign, but in multiplayer, you can see these guys are going to maybe hopefully take a little bit of a step back. They're pretty strong as they are in the Tomb Kings. I mean, honestly, they're probably one of the strongest units in the whole Tomb King roster. The Vampire Coast have had a lot of tweaks. The deck droppers have been nerfed. The Zombie Gunnery Mob has been changed a lot in their cost, their total amount of units, but also in their total amount of damage. You know, their Gunnery Mob of hand cannons has had a -8 to projectile base damage and +8 to the AP projectile damage. So you do get that swap there. Animated Hulks have had a little bit of a buff as well. They're a little underwhelming for their point cost, 800 points. They just don't really do much for what they do. Gallus Giants no longer expire before reaching max range, their actual flamethrower projectile. So that's a nice little fix to them. Our Shade Wraith Gunners gets a -100 to cost as well. Now, this is the beginning of our Terrorgheist nerf, but plus 0.5 entity height. Entity is now 57% wider, so a bigger target and harder to pull out from melee. This, of course, applies to the Deathstreak Terrorgheist for Luther Harkin. Luther Harkin also loses All Hands Ahoy in multiplayer battles. So that's pretty huge because Aranessa and the the Vampire Fleet Admirals also lose Hornswaggle. So you're seeing how the meta is shifting here. We see that Aranessa is just this complete dumpster of a lord. Like, she can do a ton of damage to things when she's on foot. And I think that they said, okay, well, maybe Hornswaggle's a little bit too much on top of her net, and they kind of wanted to curb that back a little bit. Slosha Direfin also gets a Siege Attacker on her Riding Leviathan, kind of to, again, fit the things across the board, kind of fit into the play of things. Now, the Vampire counts, again, big nerfs here. Massive nerf to the Blood Dragon Vampire Lord. Undeath Resurgent, completely gone. Armor reduction on all variations except for the zombie dragon, which gets a -8 to melee defense, and a +100 cost across the board for the Blood Dragon Vampire Lord. And then the Terrorgheist itself suffers the same Terrorgheist nerf we saw a little bit ago. So does this necessarily mean we will see the end of double triple Terrorgheist in Vampire Count and Vampire Coast play? It's hard to really say. These little things here and there will kind of come to the fore as people test them before the stuff actually comes live. The entity height means that it will also get hit by cannonballs a little bit easier too. So we might actually see the Terrorgheist builds that have been really popular for 2 or 3 major patches finally start to kind of fall to the wayside. Red Duke as well gets a bit of a shift here. He gets an increase in cost, but he gets Frenzy, which is terrifying for him. And I think that Creative Assembly looked at the Red Duke and the Blood Dragon Vampire Lord and said, well, the Blood Dragon Vampire Lord's kind of a little bit better than the Red Duke. So let's give the Red Duke Frenzy and make him cost a little bit more and really kind of fill the boots that he is supposed to have, right? He's supposed to be a better Blood Dragon Vampire Lord than a Blood Dragon Vampire Lord. So we see that kind of coming to the fore here. Then the vampires, of course, have gotten some buffs here with their armor. Siege Attacker to the Zombie Dragon variants of Lamian and Necroc vampires, and then as well as Von Karstein Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon. And then some tweaks to the armor as well for White Kings, Isabella, and Manfred Von Karstein. Then we also see the, I'll jump to that. I really want to talk about that for some reason. Wood Elves have some tweaks here as well. Hit reaction, ignore chance from 0 to 70, knock interrupts from 0 to 70 on the Treeman, so they'll be able to stay in the fight a little bit longer. Orion gets a boost to his melee defense. Wildwood Rangers and Wardens of Scythrall, the Regiment of Renown Wildwood Rangers, get a boost to their leadership. Now, the abilities for some of our units have been buffed and changed and nerfed all across the board. The Helm of Discord gets a -10 meters to effect range, which is pretty good. We were seeing that kind of abuse in the Vampire Coast a little bit. Red Ruin gets changed to unlimited uses and a duration from 50 to 35 seconds and a +9 cost in multiplayer. So this I think had a 2 or 3 charge use in multiplayer. We see that used to unlimited now, which is pretty cool to see. The Axe of Dargo as well. It's a -16 ability duration, but a -90 ability recharge at a recharge in melee conditions. So that just means that Red Ruin and Axe of Dargo both mean that Ungrim has to be in combat for these abilities to recharge, but they recharge a little bit faster now. Master of Rune of Slowness changed to -18% movement speed, removed charge bonus effect. So nice little bonuses there. Horn of the Wild Hut gets a nice little boost to its duration. Denizens of the Deep gets a +4 second recharge time. Drown Dead, increased power cost, and the upgraded variation. And Invocation Heck has a -1 second duration to both the normal and the upgraded cost. Okay, I feel like I did that whole thing in one big ass breath. So we can really see with this, we got a little, not necessarily a nerf, but we got Vampire Coast kind of shifted a little bit better into the game. Vampire Counts have gotten a little bit of a nerf with their Terrorgheist and Blood Dragon Lord tuning back a little bit. So hopefully this should kind of shift the slots in the meta where the Vampire Coast was definitely the top right now. This kind of helps knock them down a little bit and hopefully put other things up to the top. Like, I'd love to see how this affects dwarfs. I mean, Thanes aren't that common, but they're even less common now with them losing the Tormentor Sword. So we shall see what how things play out. But guys, as always, thanks so much here. If you have any questions about the patch notes, or if you want to correct me on anything, please by all means make a comment below. I'm more than happy to stand corrected. But if there's again anything you want to talk to me about or mention as far as maybe explaining some of these rules or explaining some of the mechanics that have changed and how they really affect the grander game as a whole, by all means, again, make a comment below. But guys, thanks so much for watching here today. We got our Lehman Russ video coming out here real soon. I've just finished it up. It's going to be coming out in the next day or two. We have a Warhammer Fantasy 4th Edition RPG that you will see aired on Lore Master of Sotek's channel. Myself, Turin, Gojira Gaming, Professor Pone, and then Anna, Turin's wife, will all be playing a campaign that will be DM'd by the mighty Lore Master of Sotek himself. I will be playing a halfling. No one else will be playing a halfling because I'm a disgusting creature. Walter Bottlefoot shall rise again. But as always, guys, thanks so much for watching here today. Have a good one and take care.